Hey guys, my name is Matt Johnson with whoismatt.com, and today I want to answer the question, will the Sony A7S III overheat when you use it to film a wedding? So if you are a wedding videographer like me, where you need a camera that can work all day recording B-roll off and on, followed by long continuous recording like a wedding ceremony, followed by even more B-roll of a wedding reception, I've been putting the A7S III through a wide range of tests to tell you if it's capable of doing that. There's also one big way that this overheating test is going to be different from other overheating tests you may have already seen online for this camera. My friends at Sony have sent me an advanced copy of the A7S III, but this is the exact same hardware and firmware as the final model that will be available in stores. Earlier overheating tests weren't done with this final production model, so the tests you're about to see will hopefully be more accurate and tell you exactly what you can expect when you're filming with this camera. In the interest of ethics, I also want you to know that this video isn't paid or sponsored by Sony. They literally loaned me this camera and said, do whatever the heck you want with it, just don't sell it. Now, just like my Canon R5 overheating test video, I'm going to spoil the conclusion to this video in case you don't watch all of it. Will the Sony A7S III overheat if you use it to film a wedding? No, not at all. I actually cannot think of any typical filmmaking scenario on a wedding day where it would be possible to make this camera overheat. It's that good. How am I so confident? In case you haven't seen my wedding filmmaking behind the scenes video, I've actually already filmed a wedding with this camera in the Texas heat, and it did not even come close to overheating. And after filming that wedding and doing the tests I'm about to show you in this video, I am confident that I will never have to deal with an overheating A7S III on a wedding day, and I highly doubt that you will either. On to the tests. Most filmmakers I know shoot video in two ways, so that's how I've structured these tests. First way, filmmakers shoot long, 30 minutes or longer takes of people talking like an interview, conference speaker, or wedding ceremony. These are usually shot in 24 frames per second because why would you want slow motion of somebody's lips moving as they're talking? But I do know that some filmmakers prefer to shoot everything in 60 frames per second, so I've tested that as well. B-roll is the second way filmmakers shoot, and it is arguably more important than shooting long continuous takes. For me, the majority of my time on the wedding day is spent filming B-roll. I turn the camera on, film for anywhere from 5 to 30 seconds, then I turn the camera off. I'm in the menus, switching frame rates and settings constantly. With the A7S III, I know there are some shots I want to film in 4K 24 frames per second, some at 4K 60, and occasionally at 4K 120. To sum up my testing philosophy, a wedding day is very taxing on any camera. Most wedding videographers, at minimum, are filming for 8 hours, but I've filmed wedding days as long as 19 hours. You need to have a reliable camera that will enable you to film in a variety of scenarios over an entire day. I have simulated that with the A7S III. Let's start by talking about filming a wedding ceremony with this camera. I've tested recording both indoors in air conditioning and outdoors under direct sunlight. When I tested the Canon R5, I also tested it in shade, but I figure if the A7S III can survive in the sun without overheating, it can survive in the shade as well. You should also know that I filmed these tests at the end of August, the hottest month in the state of Texas. Temperatures this week got up to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, but I can assure you the A7S III got much hotter. For all my ceremony overheating tests, I used a very similar setup to what I would use at a real wedding. The A7S III was on a tripod with a 70 to 200 millimeter lens mounted to the lens ring, so the camera had free airflow all around it. IBIS was turned off because you don't need that on a stationary tripod shot, and autofocus was turned off as well. I also filmed all these tests in 4K in the all-I format at the highest bitrate possible to generate the most heat. Lastly, unless otherwise noted, all of these tests were performed from a cold start, meaning I gave the A7S III enough time to cool down between each test. Looking at the results of the indoor tests, the A7S III recorded in 4K 24 frames per second for 2 hours and 14 minutes until the battery died without ever overheating. This corroborates with what I saw at the real wedding I filmed with the A7S III. That indoor ceremony lasted about 15 minutes from the bride walking down the aisle to the exit, and the A7S III didn't overheat even with me recording the entire time. But what about an outdoor ceremony? that is something that I needed to simulate. I took the A7S III outside on an afternoon that the weather report said was 97 degrees Fahrenheit to simulate filming a sunny wedding ceremony with scattered clouds. And the A7S III recorded 4K 24 frames per second all-I for 2 hours and 17 minutes before the battery died. Even with an ambient temperature of 117 degrees Fahrenheit and the back of the camera reaching 140 degrees, it never overheated. This is great news, and I feel very confident telling you that you should be able to film a wedding ceremony in 4K at 24 frames per second, either indoors in air conditioning or outdoors in direct sunlight at very high temperatures, no matter the length of the ceremony. If it can survive this Texas heat, it should be able to survive pretty much anything you throw at it. Now, even with that good news, I know there are some of you out there, you know who you are, who would prefer to shoot an entire wedding day in 4K 60, even the ceremony. So, of course, I've simulated that. Simulating filming a wedding ceremony indoors in 4K 60 frames per second all-I, the camera recorded for 1 hour and 44 minutes before the battery died. 0 overheating. Impressive, but that's not what you want to see. How does this camera handle filming outdoors, in the sun, in 4K 60 for an entire wedding ceremony? Taking the A7S III outside on a partly cloudy day with a weather report saying 99 degrees Fahrenheit and an ambient temperature that got up to 106 Fahrenheit, the A7S III recorded for 1 hour and 42 minutes until the battery died. The back of the camera body behind the sensor reached a temperature of 141 degrees Fahrenheit and it still kept going. There was no sign of overheating with this camera, not even an overheat warning. Because of this, I feel confident telling you filmmakers that want to shoot the entire day in 4K 60, even the ceremony, you will be able to do that with the A7S III. Is that it for testing? Hold on. Okay. I know this camera records in 4K at 120 frames per second, but I would never recommend shooting a wedding ceremony at that frame rate. It's ridiculous. Of course, I tested it though. I do have one caveat you need to know about this specific test. To record 4K 120 frames per second in the highest quality all-I format, you need to have CF Express Type A cards, and those aren't available for sale yet. So I was only able to record in the lower quality XAVC-S 4K at 120 frames per second. With that caveat out of the way, are you finally ready to see the A7S III overheat? Because it finally overheated. Filming indoors in 4K at 120 frames per second, the A7S III recorded for 55 minutes before finally overheating and shutting down. I'm honestly impressed a camera this size without a fan lasted that long. Moving outdoors with partly cloudy skies and a 100 degree Fahrenheit ambient temperature, the A7S III continuously recorded in 4K 120 for 13 minutes before overheating. Like I said earlier, I would never shoot a full wedding ceremony at 120 frames per second, and I would highly encourage you to not do that either. Here's the main takeaway for you from all this ceremony testing. If you film your wedding ceremonies in 4K at 24 frames per second, or even up to 4K at 60 frames per second, I would expect to be able to record an unlimited amount of time, indoors or outdoors, at any temperature without overheating. But how does the A7S III handle recording B-roll? As I said at the start of this video, I film a few hours of B-roll of the couple getting ready, then up to an hour-long ceremony, then immediately I'm back to filming more B-roll for sometimes 6 hours or more of the reception. We've already established the A7S III should be able to handle continuously recording a wedding ceremony. What about B-roll, where you turn the camera on, film for less than 30 seconds, turn it off, then repeat that process after a bit of time has passed? Well, I have good news. I didn't need to simulate filming B-roll with this camera because I've already filmed a wedding with it. The ultimate simulation, a real-world test. This B-roll was a mix of handheld and on a gimbal, indoors and outdoors, with IBIS turned on and autofocus occasionally turned on. I filmed some in 4K 24, 4K 30, 4K 60, and even 4K 120 if I thought the shot warranted it. I should also mention that the high that day was 98 degrees Fahrenheit, but with the humidity, it felt much hotter. Throughout the entire wedding day though, the A7S III never even showed a hint of overheating. Even when I was filming 10 minutes worth of almost non-stop 4K 120 frames per second B-roll of the couple, it handled it like a champ. We should also talk about the time it takes this camera to recover from overheating. When I tested the Canon R5, I discovered that when filming B-roll, it would build up heat over time, eventually leading to overheating even if I filmed shorter clips and turned it off in between shots, because the camera camera didn't have enough time to cool. You should also know that since making my R5 overheating video, new discoveries seem to point that Canon has actually implemented an artificial overheating timer, so that way they do not cannibalize sales of their cinema line with the R5. But that's a story for another day. In contrast to the R5 overheating debacle, the A7S III did not exhibit any buildup of heat over time leading to overheating, or any sign of an artificial overheating timer. I'm confident you can film B-roll clips with the A7S III in any frame rate or resolution without worrying about overheating. Let's say you somehow managed to make the A7S III overheat though. How long will it take this camera to recover before you can film with it again? I simulated this by first making the A7S III overheat by recording 4K 120 frames per second for 15 minutes in the hot sun. And then I found that after keeping the camera off for 2 minutes while it still sat out in the hot sun, I was able to turn the camera back on and record for 2 more minutes in 4K 120 before it overheated again. I then let the camera rest for 2 more minutes, and when I powered it back on and switched to 4K 60 frames per second, I was able to record in 4K 60 for 1 hour and 16 minutes until the battery died. As long as you aren't filming your ceremonies in 4K 120, you should be fine. But even if the camera does overheat, it will recover within 2 minutes and you can immediately record again. Wrapping things up, what have we learned from all these overheating tests? Will the A7S III overheat if you use it to film a wedding? With the way I film, shooting shorter B-roll clips in 4K at a variety of frame rates from 24 to 120 frames per second, and filming wedding ceremonies in 4K at 24 frames per second, I'm confident that even on the hottest day, I will never have to deal with this camera overheating at a wedding. And even if you're a wedding filmmaker that shoots primarily 4K at 60 frames per second all day, including a long outdoor wedding ceremony, I can confidently say I do not believe you will have any overheating issues either. Like I said at the start of this video, I cannot think of any typical wedding day scenario that would cause this camera to overheat. The only way I've found it to overheat is if you shoot in 4K 120 for a long extended period, and I do not know of any wedding filmmakers that film wedding ceremonies at 120 frames per second. Now, if you're filming a wedding couple that has chosen to elope in Death Valley, and you're filming many 4K 120 FPS shots back to back because for some reason 60 FPS isn't slow enough, sure, you may deal with some overheating then. But I literally have to envision that extreme of a scenario to think of a way that the A7S III could overheat. It's that good. When Sony first announced this camera and said it didn't have a fan, I was nervous. Recording 4K at high frame rates generates a lot of heat, but the cooling system they've included in the A7S III is very impressive, and I'm glad they've clearly put so much work into it. In conclusion, weddings are a one-time event. You don't get any do-overs if your camera overheats. I believe the A7S III is a reliable tool for professional filmmakers that will not overheat, and I intend on this to be my camera that I use to film weddings for the foreseeable future. With that, thank you so much for watching this A7S III overheating test video. I have a lot more videos planned with the A7S III in the future, and I would greatly appreciate if you would consider liking this video and subscribing if you want to see those videos. Also, if you happen to be a wedding filmmaker, this is a video about the camera overheating filming weddings, you probably want to book more couples and film more weddings. To help you out with that, I've created a free guide that's going to walk you through some practical steps that you can take right now in your business to book more couples and film more weddings. It's a completely free gift to you. You can download it at the link down in the video description. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.